Well, the $1,000 LEGO Star Wars Ultimate Collector Series Death Star has been unofficially revealed, and in today's video, I'm going to be going over everything that we now know about this set, including the entire build, because we have a shot of the entire front of the box, which shows the whole Death Star diorama build that we are getting. This one has just been a huge topic in the community ever since the rumor was first kind of announced that we weren't getting a full-on sphere build of the Death Star for $1,000, and instead it was going to be mainly diorama based. And then the community kind of hit panic mode, it seemed like, thinking, okay, what are we actually getting with this Death Star, and is it going to be potentially the biggest letdown, the biggest flop in LEGO Star Wars history? And I'm very happy to say, even though it's not maybe what a lot of us were wanting to get for a UCS Death Star in 2025, it's still, honestly, I think is pretty cool. All right, so here it is, the UCS Death Star, and right away, I think a lot of people's first reactions with this set, including mine, was, okay, I see what you guys were going for with this set. I see the overall vision and the idea when the concept for the set must have first started. How can we make a really cool Death Star that has all of these rooms, showcases all of these scenes from A New Hope and a little bit of Return of the Jedi, and just make the ultimate kind of displayed Death Star set that's got a lot of kind of interaction and things you can do with it as well with the minifigs. Right away, you guys can see that the rumor about the Death Star being more of a rectangle, and then a lot of people were thinking, was it like a slab with the exterior of the Death Star maybe on top, like a trench or something, and then underneath it you have all of the different rooms. It's luckily not that, because that I think would have been really, really bad, but you still have that half circular, half kind of spherical shaping there where it's kind of like a cross section of the Death Star, right? That's basically what we are actually getting. On the exterior, you can see that there are panels for the outside of the Death Star as well that run kind of along the just main outside the rim of the Death Star, and even at the bottom especially, you do have some of that shaping that comes out with what looks like part of the support and sand with it, where in the center you have some bricks that come out running along kind of the forefront of the set, like perpendicular to it, and then the bottom where the hangar is actually kind of comes out in a circle shape, also giving you a little bit more interior spacing there, and just a touch more of that shaping, especially at the bottom. Now, quickly, before we get into the rest of the rooms and things like that, I do want to just highlight how on the back of the box you do see the set's dimensions, and I thought the kind of best way to go about making a diorama Death Star build would be to have still where it is truly a half sphere, where you have one side that is the full exterior of the Death Star, all of the paneling and everything, the shaping, it looks like a full sphere with the laser cannon, and then you turn it around and then it's a cross section with all of the rooms like we see on the front of the box. That unfortunately just is not the case, where you can see it's mainly just, it's like just the middle part of the Death Star is all you are actually getting. Then you see on the right side of this kind of cross section where you're getting just the side view of the Death Star, where that hangar section sticks out at the bottom, and then a few things that jut out in terms of the front side as well. Like some of the other rooms do kind of come out and away from the Death Star to add more space, and then something that does jut out on the back side of the Death Star as well, then of course the laser cannon and things like that. So for me personally, I do just really wish we got the best of both worlds, the full-on kind of half exterior, fully done of the Death Star, and then what we actually get being done on the other side. But I think if LEGO was actually going to do that, it would have been well over 10,000 pieces, obviously, and then they would have charged a lot more for that as well. So, you know, at this price point, I think this is the kind of best for a diorama Death Star build that we can expect to get, and I do think LEGO did overall do a really good job. Just my ultimate kind of, like, what my ultimate concept of the set would be to actually have that full half exterior. At least then you could display it however you want, right? The full exterior or the diorama side. But that's just kind of my initial reaction to it. It looks a lot better than I kind of thought it was going to look, if I'm being honest, but it's just not as cool as best case scenario it could have been. But like I said, I think a bit unrealistic thinking in terms of that expectation, at least on my end. But let's go over all of the rooms and kind of apparent features of the Death Star. The first thing you will notice is that we do have our printed display plaque, which I think looks pretty cool. The actual image of the Death Star on the display plaque mainly focuses on the actual laser cannon of it, which, you know, is pretty cool. I could see maybe having just a big Death Star also have been looking nice, but that's what you get there. And then you have Director Krennic, Galen Erso, and then something on the center of the build, I'm honestly not sure exactly what that is. It's been a little bit since I've watched Rogue One, so I'm going to have to rewatch that movie before I make the review on the set, of course, when it comes out. But I'm not exactly sure what's in the middle there, but that becomes apparent that there's really not a space for Krennic and Galen in the actual Death Star, which I was kind of hoping in the video I made talking about potential rooms we were going to get based on the minifigs that we knew to be in this set, that they were going to do something to give a nod to Rogue One, but it does make sense that they are just on the display plaque as those minifigs, and then everything else that we see in A New Hope and, like I said, Return of the Jedi are going to be in the actual Death Star build. Okay, so moving on to the interior details of the build, just starting from the bottom, moving up above that display plaque, we have the trash compactor room. And for the space that was given for the trash compactor, I think it looks really, really fantastic. On the back of the box, there's another look at it where you actually have Han and Leia pushing against the wall. And there is a Technic gear, which to me makes it look like you are going to be able to close and move that wall in and have that interactive feature. Plus, you get the eye of the monster coming out of the bottom. It does look really great. And in the video where I was talking about what potential rooms we were going to get in the Death Star, I did mention that because we've already had a diorama of the trash compactor and the Emperor's throne room, the odds were that we probably can't expect the level of detail that we got in those diorama sets, as what we get in the Death Star is probably not going to be as big. And when it comes to the trash compactor, I do think the diorama, the standalone diorama, does look better. But all in all, pretty fantastic for what we just get for this section in the Death Star. The fact that it does really look like you have the ability to close it, because on the back of the box, it definitely looks like the space is tighter than what you see on the front. I think it was really great that LEGO did add that in, and it's a detail that for the price point, you really should get. And one detail that I think is really awesome is that it looks like you still have R2-D2 trying to shut off the actual compactor on the other side through the one blast door there that goes into the hangar. You can make out R2-D2 on the other side of that wall, so you still even have that full scene represented, which is really great. And where you have that hangar door where you can see R2-D2, there is a bit of a platform that sticks out on the other side of it in front of that trash compactor, and there are two studs that are exposed, and right away when I saw this, I thought instantly, there is no way that isn't meant for Obi-Wan and Darth Vader to duel on and kind of showcase it there, where you could place Luke in the hangar. And then once I was done initially looking at the front of the box on my phone, turn to the back, and that duel is shown there in kind of one of the alternative scenes on the back. Kind of a quirk about it though is that even in the shot on the back of the box, you do see the trash compactor sticking out there. That's just one of the quirks with the Death Star, where you're going to get things like that where some of the scenes do blend into each other a little bit. Of course, in a perfect world, you get it where it's isolated. I think even having it where that was part of like the backside, another section that actually stuck out of the back of the Death Star, where you had just a little enclosed room where they were dueling in with the hangar door that you can maybe open and close, and then be able to place Luke in front of it in the actual main hangar compartment. That I personally think would have been better and a lot cooler, where with little Technic system again, you can open and close that door. That would have been really cool, and just, I think personally, a little bit better, but this, at least the scene is represented with the build. Then, of course, we do have the entire hangar section, which, like I mentioned, does stick out quite a bit away from the build to allow for more space. We have the Imperial landing shuttle as well, which looks, in all honesty, really great. The wings are all tiled off. It looks like they're actually kind of built sideways and then attached there, which I think for a smaller kind of downscaled version to fit for the Death Star, I think it's designed based on what we see on the front, and then also you see it on the back of the box actually in flight mode. Looks pretty good overall, and in that hangar you can have where Darth Vader and Emperor Palpatine are meeting. You have all the stormtroopers lined up. The dignitary is there as well. It looks really cool. So that is one of the main highlight scenes of the entire diorama of the Death Star. The hangar does look really, really cool. It could have also been just interesting to have placed maybe like the Falcon in that or something too, which could have been cool. But obviously, just due to the space constrictions, you couldn't get a Millennium Falcon, even a smaller build in there that would remotely look good. So the Imperial Shuttle just makes sense, because with the wings folded up, you can tuck it in there. And they did a really good job of, I think, making the perfect sized one for the kind of scenario, this scene in the actual Death Star's hangar there. And on the back too, where it looks like you see outside of the hangar to actually like out into space, you have some like stars which are shown there on the wall, just to add a little bit of detail and make it look a little bit more interesting, which I do think looks pretty cool, to be honest. It's a nice little touch that they added for the detail. And with this hangar as well, now I'm kind of thinking there's that rumored gift with purchase TIE fighter that's supposed to come with the set, and I'm assuming it's a bit of a downscale TIE fighter that can fit in the hangar too, so you might have some options to actually place different vehicles inside of the hangar of the Death Star. You do then see as well C-3PO is up kind of overlooking in that one room above the hangar there, so it's kind of nice that they've had that room access there where there's a window too to look down into the hangar section, which, you know, is really great. Lots of detail in that one room. Right above it, we have Darth Vader's meditation chamber. It looks extremely squished down, but obviously, you know, another kind of scene that you'll want to have shown on the Death Star. There's a little bit of bloom behind it too, so I'm assuming maybe there's that sticker of when he's getting actually, you know, they're talking to him through the scene from the movie while he's in the meditation chamber and then he starts force choking the one Imperial officer. I forget who exactly that is, but it's probably a sticker like they did with the actual diorama scene where it's kind of represented there. Squished, but does that job fine enough. Beside Darth Vader's meditation chamber, we have Obi-Wan with the tractor beam controls, turning them off where he's hiding from the stormtroopers. That entire build and section looks really great. And then you have the swing to freedom shown with Luke and Leia going between the gap there up above. A great spot to include it all in this one section, and in general, two scenes that you just need to have in a Death Star diorama set that look really great. I'm assuming all of the Imperial lights you see in this area are going to unfortunately be stickers. I really hope LEGO prints them for us for a set of this price point, but I think all of that detail that you kind of see there, even on the tractor beam controls, unfortunately is probably going to be stickers, and the color matching is probably not going to be great, especially on the lighter gray pieces, but that's just LEGO Star Wars for you in modern times at the very least. Then we have this kind of middle hallway section there, which looks pretty interesting. There's like a little knob that you see up above there in a window into something. I'm not exactly sure what this area is supposed to be, if there's like a hidden compartment in it. And then there's also a Technic gear right above it. So does that open up a door in this section? Because one thing that kind of a lot of people were wondering about, I assume with the Death Star, is we have the hot tub stormtrooper. Where does he actually go? Because there isn't any room for him in this set. So is it there? Somehow it opens up and there's like a little hot tub Easter egg like from LEGO Star Wars where he has a spot in. It's hard to say because they don't give you any indication on the set, but there's one other area that it could be in that we'll get to in just a little bit, but there might be something going on with this area. And then the other thing too that you will see is that there is an elevator shaft represented in this Death Star, which is something that they did with the Death Stars that they've done in the past, the kind of more play scale Death Star sets. There was a working elevator, and that definitely appears to be the case where this elevator will work as well within this Death Star. And what easily is one of my favorite scenes represented in this Death Star is when Han is running away from all of the stormtroopers. That is just above the trash compactor in the Death Star build. That one is just so funny. I'm very, very surprised, to be honest, that LEGO did make this one of the diorama scenes, but it's so funny. So that for me is just a really awesome section. And in general, it's just some more additional hallway for the Death Star, some more additional interior, but that is certainly a scene that I'm going to just always have on display from the Death Star when I do get mine. It's really funny. So that's a really cool one that they have. Even Han's blaster pistol is held upside down on the front of the box. It's just great. It's hilarious. It looks really, really funny. And then we have the Death Star's detention block, which to me looks really fantastic. The kind of main console room where you have like Han talks to the stormtroopers going, oh, everything's fine up here, you know, how are you? Another just really lighthearted, funny moment of A New Hope. All of the detail that the designers were able to squeeze in this section, having all the kind of that circular computer section, looks just really, really great. And then you see Han and Chewie there where they're actually fighting some of the other Imperials. You have the sections where they can kind of duck in behind and get some cover as well from all of the incoming fire. It looks really great. And on the back of the box, you see an alternative way to display this section where Vader is actually talking to Leia while she's in her cell, where it's lower down and the hatch is open. So you just have an alternative way to display the detention block also, which is, I do think, a really great part about this Death Star build is that you do have some flexibility with what scenes you actually want to represent in certain areas at least. But in general, this is another just really, really great looking part on the Death Star. And then we have the Death Star laser cannon, which looks absolutely stunning. It looks so great. The actual dish part on the exterior, you do get the full shaping of it. It actually protrudes out and away from the build, and then you have all of the green laser beams coming together and then firing off in the middle. It was truly really well done. I think you have some clear pieces just providing some support for the entire mechanism for that central beam especially, but that's kind of a necessity to have there. I don't think it would have been obviously stable in any way they could have had it where it had the entire accurate look without having some sort of support for all of those lasers. So in general, I think the designers did a really good job with this section, and I love how you actually see the cannon kind of interior part go into the Death Star as well, kind of contributing to that cross-section part of the actual laser beam. And then that leads to the section with the Death Star gunners, which are on the controls, obviously firing off the laser beam. You have another gunner, which is looking down on the actual kind of scene there, a little window up there, which looks just really, really good. Another just exceptionally well done section in my opinion on the Death Star. It looks really great. Beside it, you just have more elevator space and then moving all the way up as well, where then we have the astromech droid and really nothing else that you can see for these sections on the Death Star. And then that does lead to one interesting thing on the back of the Death Star at the very top, kind of where this section is. There looks to be a section that actually sticks out at the back there. And this is another one where is there a kind of compartment where it all opens up? It looks like there are some Technic gears on the very top of the Death Star, maybe, you know, trying to be hidden in terms of some kind of exterior laser cannons or something, but can you kind of rotate things there on the back to open up the section for like the hot tub for that hot tub stormtrooper up here as well, because you have that back section where it looks like there is some interior space behind the kind of elevator door up there or something. It's hard to say, but that's just another area where maybe we have some hidden compartments that we just don't know of from any of the box details. And then that leaves us with two more rooms for the Death Star, the first one being the conference room. And when I saw Admiral Modi was going to be included in that list in one of those early shots where we had all of the minifigs shown that was leaked, it was just a given that we were going to get the conference room as part of the Death Star. And even on the back of the box, you actually see that scene there where you have Vader force choking him. It is just really, really funny. And then Tarkin looks to be like, you know, go knock it off, Vader. Like that scene's actually shown right on the back of the box. And that is really, really cool to see that there too. So the conference room, definitely a favorite of mine as well. And then we have the one scene from the Death Star 2 shown in where it is Luke dueling Darth Vader aboard that Death Star 2 in the Emperor's throne room. And to me personally, this is kind of almost the flip side of the trash compactor scene, where I personally kind of almost like the one that we get with the Death Star better than the diorama set, because you have a lot more of that covering of the like external of the Death Star. You get that shaping in there and it looks more tucked actually into something rather than just how it was done in the diorama. So to me personally, I do think this kind of looks a little bit better. Even just the shaping that they were able to do for the window behind Emperor Palpatine, to me it all looks really good. Of course it's a bit compressed and it's not as extended like outwards. You don't get quite as wide of a area as well, but for the space that they allotted for this, which honestly is quite a lot, it's kind of that top, you know, half of the Death Star is all for that duel scene. I think it looks really, really good. All the railing and everything. They did do a really good job with that part. On the back of the box, you do see an alternative scene where the Emperor is hitting Luke with Force lightning, and then Vader is kind of looking on, and of course you have the Return of the Jedi. So just again, you know, they're showcasing how you can display these various rooms, these various scenes done. Beside that, you have a actual laser cannon for the Death Star, which is going to be on one of the sides, I believe, kind of the opposite side to the laser cannon, kind of where you don't really get a good look at it from the exact angle on the front of the box, but you'll have that shown there too, which looks really cool. And then you have just some more additional scenes as well, like Luke in the disguise with their stormtrooper outfits, which I guess, you know, makes sense that you do get the elevator, you know, rethinking about the movie again. That makes sense. I'm gonna have to watch A New Hope as well again right before I make the review. But in general, lots of great scenes on the back of the box and just those alternative kind of ways to display it, like again with the trash compactor, Han reclining back in the stormtrooper outfit with C-3PO there too. It's going to be really cool actually to get all of these scenes kind of and to look at the Death Star and have all of this included just in one entire build. And I do think that was really the intention behind the design of this UCS Death Star. I think they probably thought, okay, we can make a big spherical Death Star, and that's cool, and include some rooms, kind of improve on the designs of the past, but then have that full exterior. Or we can make the ultimate representation of all of the different scenes from A New Hope, and then of course the final duel from Return of the Jedi as well, and just make it where you can literally look at a representation of the Death Star in a cross-section form, a big massive diorama, and then see all of these different scenes. That's clearly the initial concept that they ran with and went with, and for better or for worse, I do think in general it was executed overall from what we can see. I got to give them all credit. I think they did do a really good job, all things considered. And then we also have a full shot of the top of the box with all of the minifigs on it. And unfortunately, while I do think the designers did, for the concept and idea behind this Death Star, a pretty fantastic job, there is that huge letdown with the minifigs where we don't get dual molded legs for any of them besides the hot tub stormtrooper. He's the only one who gets dual molded legs. Like, you don't get a dual molded C-3PO in a $1,000 UCS Death Star set. It's mind-boggling to me how anyone online, you still see people defending these moves, like not giving the Imperial officers dual molded legs for their boots. It's like, it costs Lego nothing to mass produce these legs. They already make them for other characters in cheaper sets like C-3PO. You get the dual molded leg version in a keychain for like $6. It's just the one thing where I just do not get it at all. I have no idea how anyone at Lego thought this was a great idea and just, doing right by their fans, by their customers, and just indefendable in my opinion. I just don't understand your logic at all to defending, well, yeah, they didn't need to give us dual molded legs from the Imperial officers or C-3PO in this set. It's like, what are you thinking? There is no way at all you can remotely defend that choice, in my opinion. So definitely a letdown, but otherwise no surprises from the minifigs that we see, except we get the full count for the Stormtroopers. There is, in fact, 6 of them included in the set. Maybe a tiny bit low, to be honest. You could have added, even 2 more. Would have been nice, I think, to have gotten, just to kind of round out and then give the minifigs an actual number of 40 instead of 38 being what we get. Just give us 40, 2 more extra stormtroopers, not going to hurt. Fills out the Death Star just a little bit more. And then one other thing that was shown is the side of the Death Star box where it says Ultimate Collector Series, and then you have just a look at the Death Star. I don't actually remember what this scene is from. If you guys know what this is actually from, let me know in the comments down below, but definitely not the coolest, I think, shot that they could have done with the Death Star. Something maybe where it's showing like the rebels actually flying to attack the Death Star, or it firing during Rogue One 2 would have been really cool. The actual kind of silhouette of the Death Star shooting its laser down. That would have been a really iconic scene to have had. So it looks fine. I do love kind of the hints of like nebula colors in there, the blues, the purples, the reds, the oranges. It looks fine to me, but maybe just a bit of a weird choice because I don't even know where that is from. So to me, it kind of, well, it's the Death Star. It's not really invoking any emotion in terms of scenes from actual Star Wars, to me at least. So a bit of an odd choice there. And the other thing that's an odd choice too, I guess, while we're on the topic of that, is calling it Ultimate Collector Series. To me, this is easily Master Builder Series. That's what I see when I look at this set. It's just like the Mos Eisley Cantina, but a Death Star form. You get all these rooms, all these minifigs to place in. Ultimate Collector Series to me is just like fully done vehicles and things like that, like the UCS AT-AT. This to me is clearly more Master Builder Series. So it's just kind of weird that they called it UCS, but that's just, it doesn't really matter in the end, but it's just kind of interesting. I wonder what the logic is behind actually calling it Ultimate Collector Series. So overall, I am a lot happier with what we are actually getting with the Death Star than I kind of thought we might be getting with that rumor of it actually being a diorama that was like a half sphere sort of thing, which of course ended up being true. I do think the execution was done really well overall, so I'm pretty happy with it. It's going to be interesting to see too kind of the stand system. You can see what looks like to be a little bit poking out the back kind of behind the actual display plaque. They kind of maybe tried to cover it up on the front of the box just a little bit, but I assume it's going to be very stable. And in terms of that depth, I'm going to have to go and actually measure because it might fit in my IKEA Billy bookcases, which would be really nice to keep it dust free. It's going to be a rare case of if it was, if it was a sphere, it wouldn't fit behind there. Like the UCS AT-AT just fits in those and looks amazing behind me on display. So if you can get the Death Star back in there, if I can actually fit that in there, I'm going to be very happy, but I'm going to have to go and measure to see what happens. And I'll leave that for my review. So I wanted just to go over and, add my thoughts and opinions on what we are getting. I know a lot of you guys have been wanting, my thoughts on all of the new sets that released at the beginning of August, and I'm still working on making all of my reviews and the comparisons that will be on the channel like I did with the 2014 and 2025 MTTs. So just thought to give my comments quickly in a hopefully shorter video, but it might probably not that short, but just give my thoughts on what we actually are getting with the Death Star, because it's been such a hot topic with the community, so controversial, that rumor of it not being a sphere. But I think a lot of us can take a little bit of a breath and think, okay, it might not be what you wanted for your money, but I still think it is pretty cool. Not, like I said at the beginning of the video, my ultimate vision for a UCS Death Star with the one side that's the full exterior you have there, seeing the laser cannon, and then you can turn it around and have the diorama, but nonetheless, pretty fantastic, pretty cool. Is it worth $1,000? I mean, if LEGO's making a set that has 9,000 pieces, I just don't think there's any reality where it wasn't going to be at least $1,000. I don't personally believe in price per piece, like 10 cents per piece, because how can you compare like a single stud to a massive plate or something like that? You just can't. Logically, you cannot do that. I get on average, it should be about that for a set, but price per piece is something I've never been a big believer in as actually making a ton of sense. But it's kind of, at 9,000 pieces, you just would expect it to be about the $1,000 price point. And with Star Wars as well, the way the prices are going, it's just a given. LEGO's going to charge a lot for a set like this. Do I think it's actually worth $1,000? It's hard to say. If they would have given us dual molded legs, at least 40 or more minifigs, you could make a lot more of an argument for it. But because they don't give you dual molded legs in a set like this, that's just one thing where to me it's kind of like LEGO doesn't deserve our money for this set. It's just my opinion on it, because they can't even be bothered to do that. But I don't think it's completely unreasonable for just the amount of pieces, the size of the thing, what you're actually getting, the work that went into designing all of the different rooms. I think just you couldn't expect anything different, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So in order to actually decide whether it truly is worth that price point or not, I'm just gonna have to get it in hand and make that review. It's a lot. It's a lot for not even a full Death Star, I do have to admit. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments down below what you do think about the Death Star and what it actually is now. Do you like it? Do you wish there were different scenes that were added into the diorama aspect of the Death Star? Is there anything that you think is missing? What are your favorite parts of it? What do you think was done really well? What do you think wasn't done really well? I want to hear it all in the comments down below, and I'm sure I'll be joining some debates in them too, so enjoy. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Take care, everyone. As always, my name is Justin, and I'll see you on the next LEGO Star Wars video on Obi-Wan Studios.